So the highlight of the evening is, of course, Eugene. As Michael said, Eugene lived down the road here for a short while, and we were delighted to have him, but he's not too far away. He's in Kinvara at the moment. And Eugene is a marine biologist by profession. I remember when I was doing my own research here years ago, I came across papers or references to Eugene using computer programs to analyse ecological data. And as Eugene said earlier, the computer was about the size of the hall, the computer which now would fit in your pocket. But he was one of the pioneers back in that day, in that form of research. Following his great love for traditional Irish music and song, he also set up an uilleann pipe making workshop in the old schoolhouse in Folklore in 1979. I think some of you will remember that, some of our visitors from Folklore here tonight. He's played locally with many great musicians and produced many hours of video footage for the archives. In 1994, he relocated to Kinvara and spent 5 years building a steel sailing cutter in his spare time. An amazing boat. Fawny was launched in 2003, and she successfully completed several long-distance voyages in the North Atlantic, including a solo transatlantic trip from Cabo Verde to Tobago in 2004. So tonight, Eugene's going to delve into the musical heritage of North Clare with stories and tunes, archival footage of characters from the past. On a personal level, I've known Eugene for a good few years, and he's a man who's got a gift. There's no doubt about it. I think he's absolutely wonderful. He does a lot of education work with us in schools and with teachers, with communities, and the engagement that Eugene can create, that sense of engagement, is just phenomenal. So hopefully he can replicate that to the full house here tonight. Eugene, you're welcome.
It's a hard act to follow. I come from North County Dublin, and you might say, what's a man from North County Dublin coming down talking about the burn for? And what happened was, I was an impressionable young boy in 1966, and I landed up down in Ballinalacken Castle with a crowd of students. We were on a final year's field trip, and we happened to land in O'Connor's pub in Doolin after our field work, and we were caving and we were climbing the mountains, and we were very mucky and dirty, and we were being led by a Jesuit priest called John Moore, a wonderful scientist, an ecologist. He's from Charlestown in County Mayo. He only died last year. And John Moore came into the pub with the rest of us with his collar. There was no priest going around without collars those days, and he had a big pair of hobnail boots on him. And I thought it was a wonderful place because there was music being played in the pub. And everybody was dancing, and there was set dancing going on, and there was a man in the corner playing a concertina, Paddy Russell, Michael's brother. And Paddy started playing a tune, and this is the tune he played. Up to Paddy, and I said to Paddy, "Jay, that's a great tune, I'd never heard it before. What's it called?" And Paddy, big smile on his face, said, "It's called The Priest in His Boots." I discovered it's a very old set dance that had more or less extinct, but it was a set dance where one person danced with very intricate footwork, and it's never seen anymore. That was my introduction. I fell in love with the place. In the back of my mind, I said, if I ever get a chance, I'll move over here. It's much better fun than it is over in Dublin. And anyway, I went off and did other jobs, but I always had a hankering for coming back. And I got a chance to get back to Galway, teaching in the university in 1970, I think it was. So I used to come down here a lot and bring field trips. I brought students down here when the burn wasn't very well known that time. So that's how it happened. I grew to like the place and the people, and got to know them very, very well. There's almost like, I thought very often, the burn especially is a bit like, there was a book written by a man called Bruce Chatwin about Aborigines in Australia, that they could navigate over their landscape by stories and dreamings. And when I came down to Clare and I met people and went walking with them, some of the older people, and they'd have these stories about the landscape. They were very much attached to the landscape. And one of the last things that we lost in Ireland when we were colonised was the attachment to the place names. They were changed from Irish, which meant an awful lot, and it told you about the place, to nonsensical sort of names in English. Patsy Carrucan down there has a lovely song where he has incorporated the townlands in Folklore into a song. You might get a chance to hear it later on, Patsy. It was one of the big losses, that we lost a detachment to the place. So the first slide I'm going to show you up there is Blackhead. Blackhead is a well-known place. It's when you come around the corner of Blackhead, the vista opens out, you see the islands. It's an amazing place. The locals reckon it's called after this lad up here with the 2 eyes on top and the nose and the big mouth. And if you're going around Blackhead, usually you don't see that. Most people don't see it. But the locals say that's where it got its name from, Blackhead. In Irish it's called Ceann Bornia, the head of the burn. I'll have to do a little bit of jumping around here. Sorry. Come back to that one in a minute. Thought I had another one there. Can you go back there, Angela? Sorry about that. We'll leave that one there, yeah. This is another stone where people had an attachment to landscape. It's in a very grassy meadow. If anybody ever walked from Doolin up to the Cliffs of Moher, up by the Powell Sheshrock and those places, there's this stone in the middle of the field. It looks like it's out of place. The old people, especially Michael Russell, said that before his time, that people used to go into this meadow and dance at night time. And I'm sure they'd have to dance in their bare feet because it's sort of wet and rushy. But this was called the Piper's Chair. And in Doolin there was a tune that was called the Piper's Chair. And it was very much a tune belonged to one family, the Caluries. And I'll show you some videos of Paddy and Jack later. But when Brendan Brannock was collecting music for his Ceolrink and the Herden, he went to Willie Clancy, and Willie told him, when he was finished recording from Willie, he said, go back to Doolin, there's a man called Michael Russell there, and he has a lovely tune called the Piper's Chair, named after this stone. And this tune is played internationally now. You can hear it in Japan, but it's called after this little stone that's stuck in the middle of the field in Doolin. And it's a lovely little tune that goes like this. I'm not really playing these, I'm just going to demonstrate the tunes to you, so I'm going to just play a couple of little parts and then stop. You can imagine a piper sitting in that chair, maybe 100 years ago, maybe more, and people dancing around in the evening. And when the old players were playing those tunes, they would have those images in their heads. They'd remember it. Not far above that stone, there's a bog, and Jack Calury, that I'll show you later on, told me a story about the bog moving. And he said that there was a man in the house, and the bog hit the house, but the man had just gone to bed, and the bog took half of the house away, but left him asleep in the bed. And there's a tune then called after that called The Moving Bog. This is the way that one goes. So as you're walking through the landscape, these stories could be going through your mind, like the Aborigines, I think, in Australia. Navigation. You always have to have a little model in these size, so you know what size it is, you know. That's called the armchair, and it's in Blackhead as well. Now, most people don't know where it is. It's on the left before you come to the Blackhead. And people from Folklore, when they used to go to Ballyvaughan, they obviously used to stop there. sit in the armchair and break the journey. And there was a story told about a man who went to Ballyvaughan for shopbread. I don't know when that would have happened. I have no idea the time. People would tell you these stories, but you wouldn't be able to put a time on it. It was way back in the old days. And on the way back, he decided to take a break, and he sat up in this armchair and lit his pipe, and he was looking out at the sea. Wonderful view from that armchair. And he heard some noises coming in off the sea. He couldn't understand what it was. And they reckoned it was whales making noises out at sea. And he ran home and he took a fiddle off the wall and he composed a tune. And the tune is called Port Cairnbornia, the Blackhead Jig. And it's funny that story is told in the Blasket Islands as well, called Port Nabucchi, where the same sort of thing, a fiddler heard the noises coming in off the sea. And Heaney wrote a poem about it as well. But the one that this man composed was this one. I can't remember it yet. Any musicians in the audience now would probably recognise that as the Cliffs of Moher jig, but it's at a different key and it's slightly different. It's the older version of it, and they reckon it came in off the sea there. There's one more. Thanks, Angela. In this photograph here shows a very famous piper called Johnny Doolin, who used to travel from Dublin down to the west of Ireland with his horse and car and covered wagon. And people got very excited when they saw him coming. This was probably taken, I think, at a hare coursing up at the Cliffs of Moher, because the man sitting beside him would be a relation of Patsy's, John Clare. Sean and Yehi, they called him, because that he means Johnny the Liar. Because he told such great stories that weren't true, but he crafted them so well they were artistic. One of his stories that I always remember was he was fishing somewhere off Hag's Head, and his line got caught and he wasn't able to get it back again, and being a good swimmer he left the rod down and he swam out along the line, and what happened was the weight had gone down one of the chimneys in the sunken village of Kilstiffon, which is in Scanner Bay. No one has ever seen it, and anybody who ever sees it dies, but it's there, and people hear the bells ringing at night time sometimes when the sea is rough. But anyway, Stephen, he went down the chimney to get the line, and it was hooked on the crane above the fire. The hook had caught. So he took the hook off the crane, swam up the chimney, got up to the surface, and just then a big wave caught him and landed him on the beach in the Hinch. So he was the first surfer that ever landed in the Hinch. And those stories would get worse and worse. So that's why he was called Sean and Yehi. Just a little word about Johnny. He's in the picture. He would have stayed in places like Bodyke, near Martin Rochford's house, and Martin used to love to see him coming. He taught Martin how to play the pipes, and Willie Clancy was very, very impressed with him as well. So they were about the only people who travelled, the travelling people. They travelled around and they brought tunes and they brought methods of working and that. So people used to love to see them coming. They had a huge influence in County Clare on the music. Now a couple of little bits of clips of some of the last Irish speakers in the Ballyvaughan and Fanor area. When I went to Fanor in 1979, there was a woman living there called Maggie Howley. She lived in fairly poor conditions, and just show you some footage of her. And at Blackhead there were at least 3 Irish speakers there. Tomasha Nirwan, Tom Donoghue and Tom Begg. and they would be native speakers of Irish. And when they died then, Irish was dead in those places. The unusual thing about it was people who had studied the language reckoned that the connoit, the Irish they had, was more closely connected to the Irish of Waterford, the Ring area, than it was to the islands, Yarn Islands or Connemara. Because in the clip, Liam O'Meara, the poet, he died there a couple of years ago maybe, he found it hard to understand Maggie. Of course, he was a native speaker from Kerry, but he found it hard to get her. She was getting a little bit short with him. She says in the video, "Not digging to me." She said, "You don't understand me." So I'm going to try and get those. Maggie lived in a little buhan in the sandhills in Folklore. She had no running water, no electricity. She's an only child. She never worked in her life. She went to Einstein a couple of times, and she was in Ennis once in a motor car. And she never went any further than that. That's her house. And she used to go for a pension on a Friday, and she'd call into my place, which is coming up on the video now, where I was working in the old schoolhouse, and she'd drink tea there. And she was 92 at that stage. The schoolhouse has been modernised now, it's a dwelling. But she never wanted to go anywhere else. She said she was happy where she was, so she visited the neighbours every day. This is a bit where she's inside in the schoolhouse, and Liam O'Meara said to her, "This is where you went to school, Maggie?" And she said, "Céad slán is an urshin. Céad míle slán is an urshin," she said. And he didn't understand her. She had to say it a few times. And he said 100,000 goodbyes to those times. Schools weren't very happy times that time. Some of the old people that I knew when I was working there would tell me that they'd be put out by the teachers. And I don't know how they did it. They put pins between their toes for punishment. I don't know what sort of punishment it was, but yeah, they were tough times. But that was the way. When De Largy came down from the Folklore Commission in the 40s, he said that the Irish in Doolin was the most beautiful Irish he'd ever heard in the whole country. And he spent a lot of time collecting from a man called Stephen Hillary. Produced a big book about that take Leabhar Stefan O'Halera, and it's been translated at the moment by some people in Doolin. Lots of folklore in Shanachas in that book. And at one stage they went into the sandhills in Folklore to record a man called Howard, Marty Howard's father. And then the Edison phonograph they had, it's a bit like the computer that Brendan was talking about. The Edison phonograph for recording wax cylinders was so heavy they had to transport it with an ass and cart. And the day they had designed to record Howard in the sandhills, they couldn't find a donkey. The donkeys were out in the bog. So the sergeant in the barracks had to get in between the shafts of the car and pull the ass car with the recording machine on it in a good distance now from the barracks, because it was left in the barracks overnight for security.
Well,
He's saying the road into the Fina Valley is where he was born. 10 in his family.
Ni hen shandan to tanto ani Geneva bin to Safari is machines bin to gemacht gona ja tihin son shira jo kan bor in the real
vi med John Born har så gott som såna vi måste gå i att gå till Gästkraft. Ja.
Fishing off Blackhead, catching lobsters, various fish.
Paichini, kadovi, kahadahor, martin signire. Vi gick för då kahadawa tjugmiljoner fader.
Gästkraft. Kanske skor blir gästkraft, nu har skor bara.
Allora kan inte ha skor. Därmed där nu är det. Ni vill ju så gå med.
Ni vill inte.
Her parents wouldn't let her work, she said.
Bhí ghlachiad míle duine in gcónaí an chláir a lár na hís sicate ach dátha áitin eile coscósta tá pobl fanóir anna heachcanis. Sa bhunscoil nó-náisiúnta ní leanna chéanna diváin agus tanascoil tá ceoltóir agus a bhean séis bogasteach. Dinan Eugene Lambe pia sa bhuiignamh tá leacamach ina cheartlan na níochta. Patrún cutíanta sóisialta le tamala na scópúlaise bheit dógantar láimh I bobbul áirithe tuaithe ag stronséirí a bhogan isteach. Pobl beidir nachfuil inmheh in nachfaní féin orbert go thomláán. Seo héan chéilpin.
Back to Maggie.
Go scoile.
Ás chuide, tá sé di chéad an rást, duine bhí móna. Tá sé di chéad an rást. Tá sé chuir.
Tá sé di chéad an rást, they're all dead.
Tá chuir is dócha.
Fad an lá chuirhéad.
Raibh tú ngaile bríomh.
Ngaile?
Ngaile.
Ní rós.
She was never in Galway.
Ní rós.
A chu tú bhd óhhaile bríomh.
Níl chu bhd óhhaile an sadáte bhúlne. Si hí sadáte bhúlne.
Marúch.
Marúch. Ní hés in istí máin. Agus hés in inis.
Hís in inis?
Ní sin. Is féidir bhaid has út móta te. Is a cháil.
She went to Ennis in a motor
Hís
car.
in inis.
Hís.
Ach ní chu na head inis. Ní chu na headis.
But she never went further than Ennis.
Ní chu.
1980. Not that long. So when she died and Dallas lads died, Irish died in North Clare. Myself and a lad called Dick Grant were down in Doolin one day and we said it's a pity that these people haven't been recorded, and then the other said, well, why don't we do it, you know?
Well, we're here in the Glory household.
Before I play that, I just want to introduce the two lads. So we saw these lads playing one night. We used to play with them, and so we said, well, why don't we record them ourselves? So we got a cameraman from Ennis, Pascal Brooks, and prepped them up and said, we'll call to the house and we'll record a few tunes. So they were really great about it. Paddy and Jack lived together in a little small cottage up at the top of the mountain above Doolin. And amazing people. Jack was very technically adept. He used to fix wind-up gramophones. He was the man that Liam would love here in the front. I often wonder where his stuff went. He fixed watches. He got parts from all over the world for antique watches. And they kept loads of birds in the house. You'll probably hear the birds singing when they're playing. Paddy made a fiddle at one stage. Paddy used to play the flute until he heard the recordings that came back from America showing Michael Coleman's playing, and he gave up the flute. He'd lost his teeth as well, so he wasn't able to play the flute. So he took up the fiddle to try and copy Coleman. Wonderful people, and to tell you what sort of people they were, there was a third brother called Tady that went to England, and I never met Tady. He played pipes, but he was gone for 9 years seemingly, and the house was dark. And one night they were sitting in each side of the fire, and the door opened, and a dark form came in the front door, and went in the room and got into bed. And Jackals must have turned to Paddy and said, "That looks very much like our Tady." So I'm going to try and find a spot on this now. Give me a sec. I've got Paddy and John playing a tune here called The Four Posts of the Bed. It's called that, it's a fiddle tune. And in the tune, at some part of the tune, he hits the fiddle with the bow. But he said he wouldn't do it. He didn't want to harm the fiddle. So we had a little bit of discussion. I said, well, if you think of it, do it. But he said, I won't do it. So he did. He got the okay from John. If you watch it, you'll see the subtle connections between the two of them.
He playing, someone he played with the Four Posts of Bed.
I played now for you. We had that down the list there, sure.
Had you?
We had.
And Paddy, you won't tip the fiddle, Paddy.
I know.
Well, if you change your mind down through it, you can tip it.
You could have full like what
Well,
you had done. You could.
To show them how it's done.
Yeah, let's see.
Dick never saw that before.
Never steered tip, he didn't.
Here the canaries.
Yeah.
she hadn't the knack she thought she had.
She hadn't been at your child.
This is a tune for you now, Eugene. Has anybody any questions of what you've seen, or do you want to chat about that? And anybody want to throw something in? Patsy, have you anything to say? Patsy's from Folklore, one of my old mates down there. Have you any scale from would you sing that song that you composed about Folklore? Well, come up to the mic. Come up to the mic and do it, Jack. We'll wing it. We'll make a night of it. If you ever heard the play by Brian Friel called Translations, where the sappers were putting the funny names on the place names, this is Fenora's answer to it. Patsy Bruton from Fenora.
First of all, I didn't intend to be standing up here, and I'm not near the liar that my ancestors were. Really. This is myself and a neighbour of mine. He's a Dutchman called Willem Weerhuis. We decided that we'd write a song about all the place names up in Fenora because there were so many really interesting Irish names. So I suppose we just go straight into it. From Ballyvaughan to Glenina, past the pinnacle to Blackhead, I can see the bend for home now, and I know what lies ahead. It's the village of my childhood by the wild Atlantic Sea, and Blackhead is more Walia, for Fenor so dear to me. And beyond Kjamborne lies Marook, and the lovely sandy beach, and the school that caused an uproar once, where O'Shea and Lee did teach. And the coast road leads to Cragga, the boring quail runs to the sea, where the ruins at Lochanishka are still there for all to see. Up in Ballala's green fields, we used to work and toil all day, looking out across Polgorham. You'd see the mackerel rising in the bay. We'd grab the rods and fishing tack and head down to Harkeen, or maybe launch the curragh from the slipway in Derreen. I will walk on once I'm rested, and I'll go towards Ballyreen, where Paul Salach and Kyown Couple from the road they can be seen. And that favourite place for fishing bass, the sandy shoreline at Trawee, or walk the stony fields from there at a place called Dunbardalee. I will climb up Bourne and Nightshire, and through Crumlin that lies there, Fanaruska and Ballyiney, on that same green hillside fair. There's Ballella and its boglands, where old turf banks can be seen, and I'll say a prayer at the blessed well before we reach Coolmean. There you'll see old Burren farmsteads, where the people once did toil, ere I reach the Car Valley and the village of for mile. Now I leave Clare, Banna, down Loncron I now will go, where those lovely mountain avens bloom, and the Clare waters flow. And the coast where Irish dames abound again comes into view. There's Loughnane and Isle to mention but a few. There's Paul Moradney Hoohel and Paul Nadob that lies round there, near Clohanalk, that feeble rock of which sailors must beware. And further down Closculcha, which is ancient legend's own, was by competing giants from the Aran Islands thrown. Well, all those lovely place names that I first learned as a boy, in all my memories of those days, they fill my heart with joy. I think of Portna Farraga, Travella Halleca and Paul Hugh, and now I'm going to take a rest, and I'll head for O'Donoghue, and I'll sit there by the fireside, and I must think hard and long on ways of how to capture all these places in a song. Oh, sweet village of my childhood, in my heart forevermore are the songs of sea, the townlands, and the people of Fanor.
Do we have lashed off? Just to mention the line in the song that Patsy just sang there, the scientists talk about the last ice age bringing limestone erratics across from the various parts of the country, or granite erratics from Connemara across the bay. And very often in the Burren you see these big stones left in the middle of nowhere where they were dropped by the ice. But the locals know it's not that at all. It was the two giants in Arran that were having the competition, and they were throwing the stones on the Clough sculpture that he mentioned is on the right down at Paul Solach. And you'll see where it landed on the cliff, and it's split like that. And that giant was disqualified. It might be scientifically right, but it's better yarn, you know. And the place that connects people to a place. And I think one of the big problems in modern society is people aren't connected. Sorry, we're moving around, no connection with places or people, and it's important, I think, to keep that in some way, if we can. Being mobile is nice and having all the choices is nice, but it's also nice to belong and in a place. I was up in the top of the Corkscrew Hill last week with my grandchildren. We walked from there down to the Fina Valley where Tomáš Irwin was born. And I passed through the bog where Mick Carruthers used to practice his dance. He told me when he used to have the bog cut away, sometimes I'd come across a flat stone, a flagstone, and he'd clean it off, and that's where he'd learn all the trebling and did all his practice. So when he went down to the pub that night, he was well practiced. It was done in the bog. But unfortunately, we won't see him either. I'll tell you all the things you won't see. We had Pat Kane from Auchenish Island, which you probably know, looking across from the Nan's pub across the water. It's connected to Kinvara now by a causeway built by the British when they were built in the Martello Tower, but at one stage it was connected to the mainland, so it's in County Clare still. And Pat was a wonderful singer, and he used to come to the pubs in Kinvara, and he had some very funny songs. He has one song called I Used to Be a Ladies' Man, where he was in love with 6 girls. And it was in the pre-digital age, so he got mixed up with the postman brought the letters to the wrong girls, and they all found out, and in the end they all attacked him. So I have that on the tape. Sometime you'll see it again, maybe. In the days of communication now, we can't imagine what it was like to live less than 100 years ago. Pat told me when his first child was being born, he had to walk down to the sea, get a boat and take the boat across to the Nans in UK, where he borrowed a bike, cycled to Ballyvaughan to get the doctor. The doctor drove them back to UK and they went across in the boat to Auchnish Island. A difficult enough row across if the current was running there too. And when he got home, the child was dead. So they were really hard times. And a lot of houses that time had no electricity. We forget all that sort of stuff. There's a woman in Folklore told me once that her baby was crying during the night and there had no light in the bedroom, and she kept tucking the baby in. And the next morning when she looked, the baby's face was eaten. There was rats at the baby because she was breastfeeding and the rats smelled the blood. And horrific stuff, really. The child grew up grand. It was unscarred, but they were very tough times. This is your tune now, Eugene.
She hadn't an act she thought she had.
The second tune is called She Hadn't an Act She Thought She Had. She hadn't an act at all. The Saviour. Now this is Paddy Shannon. He's the last Irish speaker in Fisher Street, and he lived in this small little house, and it was going to be knocked down in about a week or 2 weeks' time. It was the last visit I had with him. They were going to make a new house for him, and they made a new house for him, and he only survived another year or so. And he talks about, I won't talk much about it, but in his fluent native speaking, he talks about how the house was built, how they went down with horses and carts to Ennistimon and got the timber, and how they cut the scraws off the bog, and how they rolled the scraws up for making the thatch. It's sort of a do-it-yourself lecture on how to build a house, really.
And to make the math and chain it for the time was according to perhaps because in Cameroon, a Cameroon, how the time the knees so in Stiman, Maradi continues, Narati, listen, Praha, Marahuja, I was for Shenis, Tilihapo, Trokul, Sinan Dort, Nursing and out, those be Tamal, often. Ach, Shenis and time was, I was in Porter and Walker, meant the matters, corner the Lishia, Scholars, Agascol, or Tom Query, I have Tom Query, Hannah, the humanitarian niche, which was, that's just in school, Horsession, Handy Mambayan, Lishana, Tom Query, Spring Upsicomana, Horses was not inch of Ida Horror to the chair. Tinching Town, just started my taking finish. I was couldn't make the Madinese in time, I was for the course in Chin, it was Yarad of Naskrahana and Sichleo. Nivahan once Naskrahan was not to the line of Sichleo. Skra the Topper, Boom. I was Maradican in the shade, Father Rechini, Rare, Erlihet, I was Cotanis Yapidi. Or Roculino Marshal Maradican in the Shinsa, Yachin, I was in Shin, Neriardis in the Roman. Shin Roman who used to stay. Nicotiniacration, Dianachin, Yish. Ach, Yardis Shin. Simple large diagno machine dat speelt met roman chin gegedomper ach Jan die speelt roa dat is maar brengen staan gegedomper en door die zo'n laten geven wel kan dat bij die roman de armenten sapal roade jaren die naar ja kunnen komen maar die kan niet enjoy maar gewoon van ons dat je in de garage habas Registers and the village to one and Hushin is a token, couple better from those in Russian, Hogation, Hogation shop. I was many yard mahan, every head in him for the Shantiana, Kittimar, Mahan, a lass of Super Hugan, Mr. Wadi. I had were the repetition warren chin, as Miss Graham chin, I was here roll out to Suez. I was colleges now, Ron Brennan, or Redican Ron out to Staffers, the Palan Machiatan.
I'll leave it at that because there's a lot of people who wouldn't have Irish there. Just give you a flavour of what our, the Irish in County Clare was like. Very, very fluent and very, very soft. Very, very different from Connemara or the Aran Irish. He goes on then, he tells a sort of a rude story about not told to ruin the mra, or told to ruin the couple. Don't tell your secret to a woman. Tell it to your horse. And it's slightly rude, so we'll have to skip it. There didn't seem to be much Victorian prudery in the older generations in the West here. It was sort of came from a city, I think. That certain things were rude and shouldn't be talked about. But all the people that I met were really very open about that sort of talk. Good fun, really. The next clip I'm showing you is. People said to me once, I showed these things, people said to me, where are there no women on the things? The women didn't go out very much those times. In the old days, I remember once, I'm not that young now I suppose, but I remember being in a pub in Dublin called The Duck in Finglas, and there was a big sign on it saying, no women allowed. It's hard to talk about no blacks and no dogs allowed, but no women allowed in Dublin in the pubs in my time. So they didn't go out, it was sort of frowned on, and if women went in, they went to a snug. So women didn't go into sessions in pubs either. So, but there was a woman in Doolin who played in a concertina, and she gave up. Like most women, when they had a family, they stopped playing. They looked after the house and everything. But this woman, Mrs. Curtin, the family bought her a new concertina when she was 80, and she started going out. And I had only met her when she came out this time. She arrived in the pub with Michael one night, and I'll show you a clip of her and how happy she was playing. And you all know Michael Russell anyway, I suppose. That's Mickeline Karukin. That's Patsy's uncle, Mick Karukin. The tune he's playing is called Sporting Nail. So we're going to continue now with Michael Russell again.
And in company of Michael now, Mrs. Curtin from Doolin. Mrs. Curtin's going to play the German concertina. And I think the first tune they're going to play is the Kerry Reed and the Green Fields of Gospel.
And the musicians should note that Michael again is playing a sea whistle, the old key. There's 3 hours of this, so I can only be short little bits. Oh, sorry, the
What year was that? Eugene. What year was it again? What was that?
1987.
Okay, we're going to continue now with a man from County Clare. He
has got some ammunition and a tried and trusty gun.
He's a great man to sing IRA songs. I asked him to sing this song about the 6 women, and he said, God be good to them, they're all dead, he said.
Yes. You're making the load up from rebellion to love making. Now you have a song about all the women you used to know in your youth. Can you sing a part of that song for us?
The lad to messenger.
God have mercy on them.
They all did come, yeah?
The Muslim rain. But there, with Torah.
I will to Ray.
Sure, I used to be the needy man, but that's all over now. I courting 6 girls all at once, didn't suit me anyhow. My mother said 'twas naughty, sure, I laughed at her advice. Although I knew 'twas naughty, yet I thought it very nice. So on Monday I met Mary Ann, and Tuesday Mary Jane, on Wednesday charming Miss Megan, on Thursday Kitty Payne, and Friday Polly Hopkins, on Saturday Miss Wall, and Sunday night I stayed inside for fear I'd meet them all. Oh, I wrote a letter to Mary Ann, addressed to Mary Jean, signed to charming Miss McGann, in care of Kitty Payne, to give to Polly Hopkins, in care of one Miss Wall. And that was how they found me out and made me feel proud. Oh, I never will forget the night I met those blessed 6. Those darlings cried, it's now your pay. for all your little tricks. Mary Ann, she put me here, and Mary did me cold. And Miss McGann, she got a man that caught me by the throat. Kitty Pin, she scratched me face, till it ran red with blood. And Dorothy Polly Hopkins, she covered me with mud. And now to make the job complete, that rascal won me swall. Oh, she bent me hat till it was flat against the garden wall. So on Monday I met Mary Ann, Tuesday Mary Jean, on Wednesday charming Miss McGann, on Thursday Kitty Pin, and Friday Polly Hopkins,
On Saturday, Miss Wall. And now I'm right for neither night. I haven't won at all.
Here goes O'Connell. What's the price of this walking stick, Mrs. You piddling to defeaters. But no, this one about the score between O'Connell and Billy Moriarty. I read it into a book.
This is a man called Brud Petty, who lived in Ballyreen, just not far from Ballinalacken Castle. And I was in his house one night, and he had a black range, and he sat in front of the range, and he had about that high of Ireland zones beside the range, and he used to learn all these recitations and songs from them. But I think he had a most amazing mind, and he has this little recitation. In County Clare, for some reason, Daniel O'Connell was a hero, and it's a great liberator. So there's all sorts of stories about Daniel O'Connell would get into arguments, and he'd always come out on top, whether it was in the courts of England or he'd get the better of everybody. But in this recitation, Daniel O'Connell is having an argument with a woman selling fish in Moore Street in Dublin, and the two of them start calling each other's names, and it goes on for about 5 minutes, quite long. We're going to break after that, and we'll throw the thing open for questions or anyone wants to say anything. So this is the last one.
The famous Daniel O'Connell, the liberator.
Yes.
Okay, maybe give us that.
This is called the National. It was a wager that was left on between a fishwoman in Moore Street and O'Connell, the liberator. He was a young barrister. This is the way it goes now, if I can think of it. Here goes a scalding match between Daniel O'Connell and this notorious Billy Moriarty, the fishwoman from Dublin. Here goes O'Connell. What's the price of this walking stick, Mrs. And what is your name? Here goes Biddy. Mrs. O'Hooligan, sir, is my name, and a good one it is. And what are you to say in it? And 1 and 6 is the price of the stick, and it's as cheap as that, so it is. Here goes O'Connell. 1 and 6 for a walking stick. You, why you are no better than an impostor to ask 1 and 6 for what cost you only 4pence. Here goes Biddy. 4pence, your own grandmother. Do you mean to say it's here for cheating the people I am? An impostor, indeed, an impostor. And is that according to your teeth? Go cut your stick, you cantankerous old jackanapes. Keep a civil tune, you head, you old diagonal. Stop your jaw, you pug-nosed badger. Or by this and by that, I'll make you go quicker than you came. Here goes O'Connell. Don't be in a passion, my old radius. Anger will only wrinkle your beauty. Here goes Biddy. By the hawkey, if you say another word of your impudence, I'll tan your hide for you. I'll make celery sauce of your rotten limbs, and sorry I'll be to soil my hands with such a common good-for-nothing scrub. Oh, boys, what a passion old Biddy is in. I protest as I am a gentleman. Here goes Biddy, a gentleman, the likes of you, a gentleman, wish that bangs banner. Why you potato-faced pippin sleazer, printed a Madagascar monkey like you, pick up enough of common decency to hide your carry brogue. Here goes O'Connell. Easy now, don't choke yourself with fine language. You antiquated whiskey drinking parallelogram. What's that you call me? I call you a parallelogram, and a Dublin judge and jury will support me in saying it's no libel to call you so. Here goes Biddy. We should hear announce that a decent, honest woman like me should be called a Paddy Bellygram to her face. I'm none of your Paddy Bellygrams, you rascal Gallisford, you coutlish licking plate licking blackguard. Here goes O'Connell. Oh, not you indeed. I suppose you deny that you keep a hippopotamus in your house. Here goes Biddy. It's a lie for you, you rascal robber. I never kept such a thing in my house, you swindling thief. Here goes O'Connell. Why should all the neighbours know very well that you keep a hippopotamus in your house, but also you have 2 diameters locked up in your garret, and you go to walk with them every Sunday. You heartless old heptagon, you unmitigated individual. Here goes Biddy. Go rinse your mouth in the liffey after all the bad words you spake. It ought to be dirtier than your face. You cantankerous old chicken of a pleasy bug. Here goes O'Connell. Rinse your own mouth, you wicked murdering old polygon. To the Dickens I'll pitch you, you blustering intersection of an antique superficious. Here goes Biddy. But you saucy tinker apprentice, if you don't seize your jaw, I'll. But there she lost her breath, and likewise lost her temper, for the last volley from O'Connell had nearly settled her. O'Connell continued, nevertheless, to berate her without mercy. While I have a tongue in my head, I'll abuse you, you most inimitable periphery. Look at her, boys. There she stands, convicted perpendicular in petticoats. There's contamination in her circumference, and she trembles with guilt down to the extremities of her corollaries. Aha, you are found out, you rectal and near, antecedent, and equinangular all had. It's with you the devil will fly away, you porter sweeping similitude of the dissection of a vertex. At this juncture, all Biddy was so overcome with her emotions that she could no longer contain herself. Catching up a saucepan, she aimed at O'Connell's head, and he was forced to beat a hasty retreat. It was decided, however, that O'Connell had won the victory. All right, from an illiterate man.
More tunes. Well, we have a little bit of a surprise for you, actually. About 40 years ago, I used to play down in Bell Harbour. Before I mention that, I'll just say another thing about Bell Harbour. During the war years, some very, very inventive man in Doolin got a horse car wheel and put it up beside Jack Caluri's house on the high part of Doolin, put an aerial on it, and they had a little, there's lots of kids here that doesn't know what this is, a cat's whisker crystal radio. The older fellas are nodding, you know. It was a very primitive way of getting the radio signal, and they were able to hear the news coming from London about what was happening during the war. And James Quilcher, Jamesy Woods, was there, and he heard over the earphones in the crystal radio that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. But he heard it wrong, and he thought it was the Japanese had bombed Bell Harbor. And he ran down as fast as he could down the Fisher Street to study the news, and the people were saying, what did the people in Bell Harbor ever do with the Japanese? So that reminds me of a time I used to play music in Bell Harbor with Chris Groney and a man from this parish, Joe Clancy. And this was all about the old days. And just to show you that the tradition is not lost, we have 4 of Joe Clancy's grandchildren to finish the night off tonight. Roisin, Emer, Ronan, and Liam.
thank Eugene very much for a fantastic talk. We might show our gratitude with a warm round of applause, please. Thank you.